Hey there guys, I'm Long Lost Daylight and today I want to share my thoughts and informal review on the recent release Project Hail Mary. If you haven't seen it yet, first of all, where have you been? It's kind of everywhere at the moment. It follows a science teacher, Rylan Grace, who wakes up alone on a spaceship with complete amnesia. He slowly remembers he's on a mission to save the Earth from an interstellar microorganism called astrophage that's killing the sun. He ends up meeting and working alongside an alien, Rocky, who's on a mission to save his world too, all the while slowly recalling how he came to be on the mission in the first place. There will be some mild visual spoilers from the art aspect, but if any larger spoilers come up in the video, I will warn you. Just as a disclaimer, I haven't read the book, and I know there are some differences between the book and the film, but this will only be talking about stuff from the film. I am actually trying something different today. I'm actually redrawing some scenes from the film rather than doing an original piece, and that's partly because it's a beautiful film. It's vibrant, and it really captures that sense of awe and wonder in space. Sometimes in sci-fi, space kind of becomes a bit normal and mundane, but it's really moving in the fact that it really captures how cool space is. I wasn't really a space kid, but space is really cool, and I think watching this really reminded me that, which was nice in a nostalgic way. But like I said, it's incredibly vibrant and beautiful. There's a lot of issues with dull colour grading in films recently, but this does not fall into that trap whatsoever. I found it was really nice to see scientific characters and characters from a science background that are made to feel multidimensional and aren't really just reduced down to like the sort of stereotype of being cold and logical, because let's be real, there's some very unflattering depictions out there, and they didn't fall into that trap, which was really nice. The character Grace is smart without being dismissive or rude to other characters, and he's funny without being the joke. Genuinely, from my experience, he's a pretty accurate characterization of both a scientist and a teacher. It's really nice seeing a male lead character have moments of social awkwardness or emotional vulnerability or cry on screen without it being portrayed in a mocking way or treated as a joke or weakness. Grace and Rocky have a really good on-screen chemistry, which I think they wouldn't have had that if he had been CGI rather than puppeted. And since their friendship and their kind of dynamic does further the plot in such a large way and play such a large role in the story, this is a really good thing. There's actually a phenomenon called anthropocentric bias, where the more similar to human we perceive something, the more empathy we tend to give it. This is an issue in conservation, where stuff like mammals and birds tend to get more funding than invertebrates. Bear with me, I promise I'm going somewhere with this. Rocky, morphologically, has basically nothing in common with humans, and if anything, he looks like a spider, which generally gets very little empathy. The fact that he's so immediately endearing to the audience and easy to care about really shows how good of a job the puppet and sound design teams did. Science does feature quite heavily in the film, but I think they had a really good balance between looking smart and still being approachable to the audience and not using too much jargon. The way that discoveries and the sort of process that science characters take in the film feels really natural and very believable to me. Now, I am going to move into talking about some specific details, so if you're trying to avoid spoilers, you might want to skip ahead. I'll pop the timestamps in the description below for you, so spoilers incoming in 3, 2, 1. Now, I really want to talk about the character of Stratt. I think it would have been very easy to fall into the trap of her being very cold and antagonistic, which unfortunately is the way a lot of women in authority tend to get portrayed in media, but Sandra Huller gives a really nuanced portrayal. Yes, she's authoritative and collective, but she's also very empathetic, and at times she's visibly conflicted about her actions. At one point in the film, Grace has to decide whether or not to join the crew of the Hail Mary, which is, if you haven't seen it, explicitly a suicide mission. He says no, and Stratt reveals that she planned to forcibly sedate him and send him anyway if he did say no. In the following sequence, as he tries to fight back, she pleads, "Don't make this harder, please." She looks like she's on the verge of tears in this scene. It's really humanising, and it makes it a lot harder to resent her as a character. I think this idea of false or forced choice that Grace experienced is honestly mirrored in Stratt in the same breath, pretty much. In the same scene, she states, we will lose a quarter of the Earth's population in the next 30 years because of the effects of the astrophage, and suggests that it could even be double that. For reference, real-life climate change targets are less than 2 degrees change in around 150 years. Predictions for 3 degrees and greater are generally described as catastrophic, and it isn't generally considered worthwhile to make predictions for greater than 5 degrees because of the extent of the damage. In the film, they're discussing 15 degrees of change in 30 years, and even if that's negative, so cooling, that would be apocalyptic. Stratt's effectively responsible for preventing the end of the world. The stakes are so high that the choices she makes aren't really choices at all. What else could she choose? This is why I don't really agree with the idea that she's a morally grey character. Ultimately, she's making the most ethical decision possible in that scenario, minimising harm, and inaction would by no means absolve her. Okay, I promise I'm going to take a step back from the doom and gloom here. I don't think Grace is a coward. Yes, he's scared at times, but being scared doesn't necessarily make him a coward. If bravery means doing something despite being scared, and being a coward means avoiding or fleeing from something because you're scared, by number, Grace is more often brave than a coward. Now, I have seen people discussing the sort of shift from Grace wearing a lot of yellow to wearing a lot of white at the end of the film as like a shift from cowardice to bravery, but honestly, something that really stood out to me is there's a scene where there's an explosion on the base where they're preparing for the mission, and him and Stratt run across a field to see if anyone survived. He's wearing a bright yellow coat, and in that scene, he really stands out against the dull background, and I thought it was a little like sunshine. I thought it might have been something to represent hope. Now, I really like the way that the music helps set the tone and sort of mirror the mood on screen. In the scenes where Grace is alone in space, it's really quite melancholic, but pretty much the frame where Rocky's ship appears on screen, there's this really hopeful chord, and the score shifts to a lot more positive and a lot more major after that. Something I really liked is that they used instruments and sort of play style to represent characters rather than melodic motifs. Obviously, take this with a grain of salt because I'm working from matching up tracks from the score to scenes from memory, so I might be wrong, but I think that Rocky tends to get characterised by a lot of quite staccato and percussion heavy sections, and Grace tends to have a lot of woodwind style and more flowing sections. It feels like a really fitting choice that matches the characters' sort of personalities and on-screen energy really nicely. As the characters start to build a sort of companionship and start to understand each other better, the two styles and the two sets of instruments start to sort of overlap and intertwine, and it's just really lovely. Honestly, just like I said, it's a beautiful score. The music in the A Moment scene honestly has me close to tears without the actual film. I've been listening to the score while working from home, and yeah, I'll be trying to mind my own business and I'll be like, oh, tears. One of my only issues in the film is in a few of the more serious scenes, there was kind of humour and funny lines where it didn't really feel like it belonged. There's a scene where Stratt and some of the other scientists working on the project and some of the astronauts sit Grace down and tell him they want him to go on the mission, which is it's quite a heavy scene, but he's still quipping and kind of going, I put the not in astronaut, which is a very funny line, but it kind of undermines the gravity of the situation in a way that I don't think works necessarily. However, it does seem to have been intended as a family film, so this could have been included to make the scene less upsetting for younger viewers. Honestly, the dialogue in the scene really does fit Grace's character, but I can't help but wonder how much more tragic the scene would have been. At first, I didn't really get the ending. I thought the final epilogue scene on Erid was really nice, but maybe not necessary. The scene before it, where we see the Hail Mary sort of heading off into the great unknown of space, I thought that really worked really well. And in that scene, we do get this kind of image of Grace as a hero, which we don't really see in the rest of the film. And I really like that. And at first, I thought that having that epilogue undermined that feeling a little bit by sort of having him return to normality. But after a couple of days to think about it, I realised that's exactly why it works. He never wants to be a hero in the first place. In that final scene, we get to see him exactly where he wants to be. He gets to sort of return to a version of the life he was forced to leave and keep doing something he loves even after literally saving entire planets. It feels like a fitting ending. It may be, if not the most cinematic. I think this is another case where I have far too much to say to fit in a video, so I am going to cut it off here. It's a genuinely beautiful film, visually, musically and thematically. It's funny and compassionate, and it's downright heartbreaking at times. I know it's recently got an extended cinema run, and if you have the chance to go see it, if you haven't yet, I genuinely really recommend it. It's a great experience, and you really can feel how much care and passion went into making it. Overall, I'm going to give Project Hail Mary a 9 out of 10 for quality and another 9 for enjoyment. I mean, in 3 words, amaze, amaze, amaze. As you can probably tell, I'm a science kind of guy, and that's going to definitely will have affected how I found this film. And if you found anything different or have any other ideas, please comment them. If you want to see more of me yapping and drawing in the future, consider subscribing. There's a lot of cool films coming out in the next couple of months, and I'm excited to talk about them with you guys. I hope you have a lovely day or night wherever you are, and I hope you can join me next time. See ya!